All right, Chris, take it away.
Awesome. Yeah, let me get a screen share going here. There we go. Get that. Don't need the camera. So we've made a lot of changes to RITA, as John was talking about. One of the first ones is just a second here. Long passwords. Here we go. So one of the first ones is it's all based around Docker. So at the beginning of the cast, Bill was kind of talking about, hey, no slides. Nope, we're going straight into it. I decided not to like kill people with slides today. We're just going to go do all hands on. And as I mentioned earlier, if you want to be able to kind of follow through on the labs, go to the content channel, which is about 2 channels below the one where we're doing the chatting. There's an install guide. Get yourself a copy of CentOS or Ubuntu. Although there's a lot of other flavors that this will run on, we're just not fully supporting it yet. But run through the install. It's about a 15, 20-minute process. And everything I'm doing here, you'll be able to go through and do as well. So, oh, John, that's awesome. No slides, just Python scripts. Yes. So one of the first changes is Docker. Everything's containerized. And this is one of the reasons why it'll run on so many different things. This was a real challenge, especially with Mongo on the back end with the old version of RITA, because every time a new version of software would come out, something would break something we were doing in Mongo. And it just, it was like constantly chasing the wheel to just try and keep things running and stable on platforms. So now that all this is running in Docker containers, not a problem. It's going to make life a whole lot easier. The other thing I want to point out is this right here. Gone is Mongo and is ClickHouse. So what we did is we said, okay, Docker's, Docker. Mongo's great for like a document-based system. It's great if you want to create like a social media platform or something along those lines. But we're mostly working with Zeke data. Zeke data is structured data. We should probably be using something that's designed for structured data. So we looked at a bunch of different applications, and ClickHouse was the one that came through. A couple of reasons for that. One is, oh my God, it's fast. Like 20 times faster than what we were getting out of Mongo. We would take a data set and we would ingest it and process it in Mongo and then do it in ClickHouse. And the Mongo one might take 2.5 minutes to process. The ClickHouse one was finishing in like 4 seconds. It's like night and day. And one of the really nice things about that is when you look at how big of a link speed could you support with RITA? The old version of RITA was topping out at around 5 to 8 gigabit. You'd need to run it on a decent sized VM. But, one of the things we do with RITA, as I'm sure most folks know, is every hour we grab an hour's worth of data, and then we take the previous 23 hours, put them all together to get a 24-hour block, and then we go through and we hunt that 24-hour block. Well, that means that's happening every hour, which means we need to be able to hunt through 24 hours worth of data in less than an hour's period of time. Well, the whole system starts running behind. So when you look at, okay, how much data can you throw at RITA before you start running into that? It used to be in like the 5 to 8 gig range. We haven't tested this up to 100 gig yet. The highest we've been able to test so far is closer to 10 gig, but I would not be surprised to see this come. If it's not going to meet 100 gig, it's going to come damn close to it. So there's a lot of speed improvements that have popped up in this as well. Now, because we've got Docker in the background, one of the things that's different is you're not necessarily working directly with the binaries. I'll show you what I mean. So if I run the Zeke command, I get this block of text. Well, no, usually you get the help screen for Zeke. What's going on? Well, Zeke is running inside of a container. What you're actually interacting with is a script that was written by Bill. So what Bill's Zeke script does is it goes to that container and interacts with the data that's stored inside of the container, and it obfuscates it in a way to make it look like it makes it look like everything is still actually running directly on the host system, even though it actually isn't. So some of the commands are different off of what you'd normally see with Zeke. And you'll notice some of the commands have changed with Reader as well when we get into that. But one of the big things that's changed is how do you import data, right? So normally with Zeke, I'd do a Zeke space dash lowercase r space the name of PCAP, and I'd import data that way. I've got two useful directories here, lab 1 and lab 2. And in here, I've got a PCAP. So I want to go in and I want to read in this PCAP. I want to go in and process that. So the command for that is going to be different than what I was using with Zeke. So I'm going to say and again, this is when Zeke is installed by RITA. This is what you'd use. Zeke read PCAP, path to where that PCAP is located. So in my home directory, there's a lab 1 directory, and it's located in that that PCAP is located in that lab 1 directory. And then you tell it, where do you want these log files to go? And I want to put it in that same lab 1 directory. Go through, hit enter on that. Take a little bit to process. And then once it does, I'll have all my Zeke logs in this directory. Once I have my Zeke logs, then I can go through and I can use RITA to import them into Reader in order to be able to interact with them. What's going on here? There we go. I'm not sure why that wasn't starting for me. That was kind of weird. Oh, and I don't want to do that because Zoom likes to cut off the bottom of the screen. I don't want folks to miss what I'm typing. So this is going to go through and do its thing. It's going to process the create the Zeke logs for me. It should only take another couple of seconds. This is a fairly large PCAP file that I went through and put in on this one here. It's got a lot of good examples of different types of traffic patterns, which is why I went through and did that. Need a sacrifice to the demo gods. Yeah, that's, I agree. Come on, you can do it. And is this actually, let's see if we're getting Zeke logs. Yeah, we're getting Zeke logs. So why is this taking so long?
Someone is sacrificing Luigi.
There we go.
There we go. That did it. The sacrifice to Luigi pulled it in.
Thank you for the Luigi sacrifice. Yes.
Thank you, Lion Share. We appreciate
yes,
that.
That was clearly needed. Okay, so now the import for RITA, the command's a little bit different than it used to be in the past. So I'm saying RITA space import. Now in the past, I would just go in and say, here's where my Zeke logs are. Here's the directory. Here's the name of the data structure I want to use. We added in command line switches. Just that way you can change the order if you need to. So -L is going to identify where are my Zeke logs. And we already said it's in that lab 1 directory. And then what do I want to name the data set when it's done? And in this case here, I'm going to name it lab 1. So I'll go through, tell RITA to do its thing. You can see it going out and interacting with the, what do you call it? With the Docker instances, and it imported that and processed it pretty quickly. So like I said, the ClickHouse is a lot faster than what we used to be able to get out of Mongo. So now I want to go in and look at that data. Now, so this is another big change. Before, you had to go in and you had to do a, show beacons, show beacon web, show long connections, show me this, show me that. Well, now the command is view. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to say RITA view and this lab set that I just created. And here's what we get. Now, if it seems boring, that was on purpose, right? One of the things that I find kind of fun is that as the product owner, my job as product owner is the complete opposite of most product owners' jobs, right? Like if you were to talk to the product owners for Twitter or Facebook or anything else, they're going to tell you their job is to keep you in that in their interface for as long as possible, keep you scrolling. YouTube, same thing. To me, our job is the opposite. Our job is to get you in, let you see what you need to see, and then get out and get to whatever other responsibilities you have. So there's one view to be able to get to everything now. Now, one of the things that has changed is how we've gone in and scored things. We had different scoring in different sections, right? So you had like a beacon score, how beacony is it? You had, long connections, how long was it running for? There was also, it was kind of, disheveled a little bit. As you can see here, we've gone in and we've pulled that all together. And we've gone through, we've given critical, high, medium, low for scores. So that kind of helps drive what is it I need to go in and take a look at. One of the challenges with the beacon score was always, how low do I go, right? Should I review everything with a beacon score of, 90 and above, 80 and above, 50 and above? Where do you stop? Well, critical, high, medium, low kind of speaks to what we're used to dealing with on a regular basis. So it's a little bit easier to figure out, I need to do my criticals, and then maybe I'll go through my highs and that type of thing. So if I look at, this interface, so the interface is actually bubble T. I know it looks a little bit like ncurses, but it's even better than that. Bubble T is freaking awesome. It was the original structure was created by a couple of women. They wanted to give everything girly names to it. They all have girly names to it, whatever. It's awesome code. It's absolutely awesome code. And it made building this interface really easy to go through and do. So we're in an SSH session. But even though I'm in an SSH session, I still have an ASCII graphical interface to work with here, which is kind of nice. You can see I've got color coding everywhere. I can see, what's getting highlighted at any given time and all of that fun stuff. So if I just kind of go through these, so I've got an internal system talking to the system out on the internet. It's 100% beacon. What does that mean? So this is one of the challenges when you get into RITA versus getting into AC Hunter, right? Because AC Hunter draws you a pretty graph. RITA doesn't give you any pretty graphs. Just in this webcast, I gave you some scripts to kind of work around that. Let me show you what I mean. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to highlight the 2 IP addresses that were part of this beacon. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to the command line and I'm going to say, I gave you 3 scripts. I gave you beacon con, beacon host, and beacon SNI. Beacon con gives you some visualization based on there being just IP addresses to work with. Beacon host and beacon SNI are if it's an IP address going to a fully qualified domain name. Host if it's an HTTP session, SNI if it's a TLS-based session. So we've got 2 different IP addresses here. So I'm going to use beacon con. And then I'm just going to paste in those 2 IP addresses that RITA went through and reported and said it saw a beacon for this. When I go through and run that, this gives me output showing me how many connections were made from the source to the destination every single hour. So you can see I've got a very repetitive pattern here, right? 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 2. Well, this was being identified as NTP traffic. NTP on an Ubuntu system is going to go off about every 25 minutes. If I'm going off every 25 minutes, most of the time it'll go off 2 times, then it might hit 3, and then it might drop to 1. This is why I'm seeing that pattern I'm seeing. So this, to me, this first entry looks like it's just regular NTP traffic. Now we've got some additional things up here. We've got threat modifiers, but there's no information there yet. We'll come back and talk about that one in just a little bit. And we've got this thing here, prevalence and first seen. What are these 2? Let's talk about first seen first, because that's the easiest. First seen is, when was this destination first seen on your network? When was the first time somebody talked to this? So what's kind of cool about this is the longer you let RITA run, the more accurate a job it does at identifying what you need to pay attention to. So the concept is, if your network has been talking to this site for like 90 plus days, it's probably okay, right? I mean, either something's already whacked and you've just missed it, or it's probably okay. This is a system that your network has been talking to fairly consistently. But if first seen shows up as being an hour ago, oh, that's something new. New is always interesting, right? It's like we're, cell phone carriers, right? New is, we always care more about new customers versus the old customers. This is the same thing. We've got a new target people to talking to. That makes it more interesting.
And this is a new capability with this version of RITA, right? Like the older version of RITA
Yes.
did not necessarily have this because of the limitations of Mongo, correct?
Yes, Mongo limited us to working with 24 hours worth of data only. And by moving to ClickHouse, one of the many benefits we got is we're now going to start retaining data for 90 days. So yeah, you can go back and you can see, oh, this first showed up, 63 days ago, whatever the case may be. Now, prevalence, this is going to change in the next version. So prevalence, that percentage, what it's telling me is what percentage of my network is talking to this external target. And this is telling me 17%. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean I have only 5 systems on my network and one of them is talking to it, or 6 systems on my network and only one of them is talking to it? Do I have 1,000 systems on my network, in which case there's a couple dozen talking to it? That's not immediately apparent here by using a percentage. So what we're going to change this to is it's going to identify the number of systems talking to this target, and then a slash, and then the total number of hosts that have been detected on that network. So you'll see 1 out of 87. So that'll tell you, okay, this is the only system out of 87 different systems that's talking to it. And the reason we want to do that is because this can kind of obfuscate whether you really got a problem or not the way it is. Imagine this says prevalence is 100%. 100% of your network is talking to that system. Well, that sounds good, right? Oh, hey, everybody's talking to it. It must be okay. But what if I'm only actually looking at a PCAP that only showed me one source system? Well, now that 100% doesn't really mean anything, right? The other challenge you run into is that timing is only in reference to the PCAP. You're right. If I'm reading a PCAP, let's say I have a 24-hour PCAP, nothing's ever going to be older than 24 hours because I've only got 24 hours worth of data to work with. So the first scene and the prevalence, the scoring for these only kick in when you use a rolling data set. So a rolling data set means I've got Zeke monitoring the network. Every hour it's pulling that data in. The data set's going to get richer and richer as it goes on. When you're doing that, these will play a role in what your overall score is. When you're reading a PCAP file like we are right now, yeah, it isn't going to go through and it isn't going to show us that. Let's take a look at the next one. So this one, I've got an internal system talking to this IP address. Now, this is an TLS SSL session. I should be seeing a fully qualified domain name here. I don't. I'm seeing an IP address. So that gets me kind of suspicious right off the bat. 13,000 connections. Okay, let's take a look at that one. So I'm going to go through, copy that. I'm going to pull up my beacon screen again. And this time I'm going to say beacon SNI, because it's SSL TLS traffic. I'm going to put those 2 values in, and it's coming back and telling me nothing. Well, what does that mean? Well, that means that there isn't actually an SNI value in there. So this is probably going to end up being TLS version 1.3. With TLS version 1.3, you don't have to expose the fully qualified domain name the traffic's going to. It's considered a privacy feature. And to me, quite honestly, it's one of the most horrible things we've done on our network because it takes out an awful lot of visibility like this. So instead, I'm going to have to use the same beacon con to look at this from IP address to IP address. And when I do that, oh, hey, look, I've got about 555 connections going off each hour, but notice it's not exactly consistent. This jitter here. In fact, this is looking to me a little bit like Cobalt Strike. Cobalt Strike does that. It beacons most frequently in the mean, but less frequently at the min and the max. That's kind of what I'm seeing here. So this to me is starting to look like, yeah, I might have a real beacon here that I need to go in and pay attention to. From here, I'd probably want to go in and start jumping into the Zeke logs to see, okay, what can that tell me about what's going on? I'm going to skip that part just for now because I want to make sure we leave time for questions and going through another data set and all that other fun stuff. So this one here you've probably seen before, right? So ctldl.windowsupdate.com. This is indicative of a Windows system going out and checking to see, are there any patches for me? Now notice we've got a new threat modifier being triggered here, rear signature. What is that telling us? That's telling us that this source system, 192.168.100.152, the only time that signature is being used is when it's talking to this destination. Normally, your identifiers are being used in multiple systems, right? If I'm running Chrome, on a Windows 11 system, it's going to identify itself the same way to every single system it talks to out on the internet. So it's weird when you see a unique signature pop up where it's only being used to talk to one target out on the internet. And that's what we see here. That's what's bounced this up into the high category, is the fact that this is the only time this is being used. That's a new feature with Reader as well. With Reader in the past, you could go in and you could look at what the user agent string was or what the J3 hash was. But we didn't use that to modify the overall scoring of what should be a priority for you. And here we've gone in and we've rolled that in. So this is, excuse me. So this is HTTP traffic. Cool. So I'm going to go in, I'm going to copy that. Then I'm going to go back to my other terminal and I'm going to say beacon host, because it's HTTP traffic, those two endpoints. And yeah, I can see this is going off on average twice an hour. It varies sometimes. Sometimes it was 3, sometimes it was 4. Now, one of the things I may want to do is I may want to look at, what do I know about this system? When you look at the Zeke logs, Zeke actually records a lot of cool information, right? It sees the DNS queries and responses that goes out. It sees the host parameter in HTTP session. It'll see the SNI and the TLS sessions, unless it's TLS 1.3. It gives us a lot of information to work with. One of the other scripts I gave you is this FQ script, where you can go in and you can paste in an IP address or a fully qualified domain name. And when you run that, this comes back and shows you everything Zeke knows about that name. So for example, it came up and said, okay, here's what's in the DNS log file that's associated with that. And we can see there's a bunch of different lookups that were done. There's a bunch of C names that are associated with this system. We get a number of different IP addresses that come back. So this is obviously going through a content delivery network. There's actually multiple systems involved. And when we look at the HTTP info, we can see we connected to multiple different IP addresses in order to get to that fully qualified domain name. Well, this is kind of cool, right? Because when we looked at the beacon, it's only connecting out a couple of times each hour. What this is telling us, it's connecting to a different IP address every single time. So what Reader is effectively doing is it's saying, hey, the intent was to go here regardless of which IP address it was connecting to. So we're going to tie those all together as part of going through and giving that beacon score, which is kind of cool. So that's some of the fun stuff that we got going on in RITA. Let's do another data set. So now I'm going to go over to the lab 2 directory and we'll play around with this one for a little bit. So just like before, the first thing I need to do is I need to go through and run the Zeke command to process the data. So I'm just going to say Zeke read pcap. Here's where my pcap is located. Here's where I want to go through and run and save the log files. So I'll go through and run that. I can see it's starting up my Docker instance. I'll give this a couple of minutes to run through. And now that's gone through and processed that file. So now that I've done that, the next thing I want to go through and do is I want to go through and I want to load this up into RITA. So I'm going to say RITA import -L. The Zeke logs are located here. -D, I want to name this data set lab 2. And then once I've done that, I just hit enter. There we go. Reads that in. And now, just like before, RITA view, only this time we're going to take a look at the lab 2 data set instead. Text is off the screen. Sorry about that. That's a Zoom thing. So one of the challenges I'm running into, let me get rid of that. One of the challenges I'm running into is I'm trying to keep the font a little bit bigger. Let me make the font smaller. That may help fix our problem here. There we go. Now I can keep it up high enough that you can see on the bottom, but it isn't going to clip the bottom of this data output. Awesome. So I notice you can resize things now, which was a problem before. So that's kind of cool. So notice this time we've got a critical. So I've got an IP address talking to a host out on the internet. There's 100% beacon score. This to me is just super helpful because how long did how long were communications going on for versus beacon? You had to jump back and forth between two different screens. Well, here I've got it all in one spot. So I can see there's 100% beacon score because there were 2,868 connections that took place. But those connections were active for a total of 17, almost 18 minutes out of that 24-hour period of time. So it's nice to be able to have both of those contexts there as well. So if I look at what's here, prevalence, 100%. Well, I've only got a single IP address, so that doesn't really matter. For a scene 23 hours ago, I'm reading a 24-hour PCAP. So again, those aren't playing a role in what the overall score is, or the overall visibility of this thing. But notice the rare signature. Mozilla 5, Microsoft Internet Explorer 7, Windows NT 5.2. Yeah, I don't think so. That is a really old signature, right? That doesn't make sense. That's wicked old. The other thing that makes it interesting is it's being identified as a rare signature. That tells me the only time, again, the system is using that signature is when it's talking to this target IP address. So like before, if I want to go in and I want to look at, so it's HTTP traffic, I'm not seeing a fully qualified domain name. So that's kind of a problem, right? That should be, HTTP is clear text. I should be able to see the fully qualified domain name it's going for too. So let's go through and we'll do beacon, host, and we'll go through and, yep, and that did not paste what I thought it was going to paste. What did I do wrong? Let's try that again. I love live demos. Paste that in. There we go. It's not registering because, again, it's not giving me a fully qualified domain name. So let's try beacon con because I'm working with 2 IP addresses. And that didn't work. You gotta, oh, I know why. Lab 2 directory and host should work now. Yes, it does. So I have to be in the directory where the data sets are located. So when I use these scripts, the beacon host, the beacon SNI, FQ, you need to be in the directory where those Zeke logs are located in order to be able to go through and do this. But notice we've got a pretty consistent 120 connections each hour. That's 1 every 30 seconds. Yeah, that's definitely a beacon. So, why was the beacon score so high? Well, because it's pretty much a perfect beacon. So we've got a beacon making thousands of connections, identifying itself in a unique way. And that unique way is as an older Windows system that we probably don't have on our network. Yeah, this is definitely one we want to go in and we want to make sure we pay attention to. Right? Let's see. Yeah, tile windows. So that's one that you've probably seen pretty frequently. Oh, actually, let me go back to this first one again. Let's just see what we know about that target IP address. So I'm going to say FQ and then the IP address. So remember the FQ, that script will take an IP address or a fully qualified domain name. And this is telling me there was no DNS lookup done. The host parameter is being identified as the IP address. There was no TLS traffic that took place there. Yeah, that's definitely wrong. Right? The host parameter should always be a fully qualified domain name. So anybody who's gone through the level 1 threat hunting class knows that, yeah, no, that's warning sign number 1. That means somebody's up to no good. Let's pull another one here. So yeah, let's grab this one. So BNP3 wins window.com. So 0% beacon, about an hour's worth of traffic. TLS-based traffic. So let's go in and let's take a look at that one. So I'm going to say beacon, SNI, paste in that fully qualified domain name. And what did I do wrong? What did I do wrong? Oh, I know what I did wrong. I wanted to use the SQ script. I'm only giving it one parameter for the beacon one. It doesn't know how to do the beacon with that. I wanted to actually go in and do the, what does Zeke know about this fully qualified domain name? That's what I was trying to accomplish here. So we can see, here's our DNS info right here. There was no HTTP traffic, with TLS traffic. So this is kind of cool. So when talking to this, we were talking to that IP address because we were trying to get to that system. And this OK means that the target system has a valid digital certificate. So one of the things that is going on in the background with the way we install Zeke is trying to validate all the digital certificates that everybody talked to. So if this was a self-signed certificate, it would tell me self-signed cert. If it was, if it was expired, if there was, if it was an unknown cert, it's going to come back and it's going to tell me that. So that can be super useful information if I'm going through and I'm trying to run down a TLS-based session. So as you can see now, to a little bit more on navigation. So I use my arrow keys to scroll through. I can keep scrolling down on an arrow till I get to the end, right? You can see these last few are none. Actually, let me go back to the first data set because that one's a little bit bigger. So I'm going to say RITA, view, lab one. Let me expand this out a little bit. There we go. So I've got many pages here. See the little dots down the bottom? Notice every time I go to a page, it moves to the right another dot. That gives me an indication of just how much data is here to go through. Now I can keep arrowing down, or if I hit my arrow to the right, that'll do a full page. So notice I went from everything being medium to immediately to, I have two mediums and everything after that is low. That's because I was just hitting my right arrow to go through and page through. Is the FQ script available on GitHub? It is not, but it is, let's see, we toss this into Discord. Oh, Hex already did. They beat me to it. Yeah, if you download, oh no, actually use the one Hex gave you. I just copy pasted the wrong thing. I apologize. I'm a little bit off my game today. I'm just finally coming out of having COVID. So the brain's still a little messed up. But HexEdit shared a link. What's this stuff.s3 Amazon, rita-lab.tar.gz. If you open that up, that's going to create 3 directories. And the 3 directories it's going to create are these 3 right here, bin, lab 1, and lab 2. And in the bin directory is all of these scripts that we're going through and using. The exception is this one here, Zcutter. So Zcutter is Bill Stern's version of Zcut. And what's awesome about Zcutter is that Zcut only works with CSV-based Zeek logs. Zcutter will work with JSON ones as well. And in fact, one of the things Bill did, because he's Bill, is Bill wrote it up so that you can feed it JSON and CSV files at the same time, and it won't care. It'll just process them in whatever format they have to be in and consolidate everything all together. The other thing you can do with it that you can't do with Zcut is you can actually go through and cut things out of multiple files at the same time. So with Zcut, I could normally go in and say, hey, show me this in the con.log file, or show me this in the http.log file. But with Zcutter, I can say, show me these fields that appear in con.log, and then show me these other fields that are associated with that will appear in that'll appear in the http.log file or the ssl.log file or whatever the case may be. So Bill did an awesome job with that tool. So I've included that in. And if you just take a look at these scripts, they're pretty straightforward, right? There's not a whole lot going on here that we haven't talked about in like the level 1 class. So I'll leave it to you folks to kind of go through and you do check it out yourself. The one thing that'll be different from what you might have seen before is I'm using Zeke Cutter instead of using Zeke Cut to go through it and check these out. But that's RITA. That's what we've come up with. So at this point, I want to open it up. Does anybody have any questions they want to toss through? Or are there possibly questions that have popped up in Discord that I may have missed?
One of the questions we did get was how long until AC Hunter is using this as the back end and ClickHouse and everything?
Yeah. So the front end for AC Hunter is almost done. I'd say it's about 75% there. The back end is done because we use RITA for that. So there's two things that need to happen next. One is we need to vet this, right? Like now that it's there and it's working and everything's there, like I mentioned that, hey, prevalence, we're changing the way that that's going to go through and do its recording. We're in the process of doing long-term testing. You know, we just finished this. We know it'll record data out for 90 days, but we don't have a lot of data sets where we've actually done that yet because it's a brand new tool. So we're going to go through and we're going to use RITA to kind of vet and tune and tweak to what we want to put into AC Hunter. And in parallel to, so like Bill and Keith and I and Fawn are working on that. And while we're doing that, what the devs are working on is the middleware. And there's a lot of middleware work that needs to be done. One of the things we did in the past was if you wanted to talk to the data, you talk to the Mongo database. Well, we really need an API. There really needs to be an API here to work with, and not just for being able to pull data out, push data in and pull data out as you need, but it'll let us integrate with third-party tools a whole lot better. It'll also let us integrate into some of our own tools better. You know, the cyber deception module within AC Hunter, we could do a better job of having that work smoothly than what we have today with trying to use it with Mongo. And one of the biggest things we can do to help fix that is create that API. So middleware API, vetting this out to figure out what final tweaks we want to make on AC Hunter, all that stuff is going on in the background. But if you got any other questions, I can pull up a general idea of what AC Hunter is going to look like for folks while we're chatting. Do we have any other questions come through?
One thing that
Chris, go ahead, Aaron.
One thing that Naomi answered is there's a question about whether the new RITA uses Fourier transform, and I got to find Naomi's answer so I don't get it wrong. But she said something about it used something else instead because the jitter. Oh, sorry, I just had her answer.
Well, Fourier's really slow. Like if you want to go, we actually do a number of different things, Chris, and correct me if I'm wrong. We have MadMom and we do use k-means clustering now, I think.
Not really, no.
Not yet? Okay.
No, not yet. We used to, we threw that away.
Okay. Yeah.
We're doing the biggest problem with k-means clustering is as soon as you introduce jitter, it's useless.
It's gone.
You got to fall back on signatures. And John, you've got more visibility than I do, but I don't think I've seen a red team or a malicious actor not use jitter for at least the last 3 years or so.
And that's one of the distinctive things that we do kind of focus on. Like you were talking about, I thought it was funny. I commented on it. You look at it, you're like, yep, this looks like Cobalt Strike because of the nature of its jitter. And we've had a handful of things where we've seen legitimate jitter from services and it made sense. Was it Linode? Where you access the console from the web and it introduces jitter. And the reason why they do that, if everybody's using their consoles and they're all coming in at the exact same interval, it overloads the service. So they introduce jitter to disperse that load across multiple different terminal sessions that are coming in through the browser.
Exactly right. And it's not just them. There's actually a couple of different cloud providers that, they've got an agent running to identify what's the CPU usage and all of that. And you're right. If everything reports in at the same time, it will kill their system. So they jitter the response going back, but those are easy to spot.
And they're rare, like legitimate jitter. incredibly rare. Like,
Well, it's rare. Yeah, I've only really seen it with cloud providers, but it's always that same signature where everything's going to the same block of IP addresses within that exact same cloud provider. It's gonna look like, because DigitalOcean does that too. I think we've seen it in I forget if it was Microsoft or Amazon. It was one of the two. We noticed it there as well. But it's always that same thing where, yeah, it's going back to the same block within that same provider, and it's a very, it's an edge case. But yeah, you're right. If as soon as I see Jitter, my first thought is, yeah, no, it's evil.
Another question is, what are the chances Beaker will get baked into AC Hunter? That's a good question.
Yeah, so actually that's part of what Aaron's working on. So that is part of what we want to do long term, is start doing better data collection on the endpoints when we don't have the option for being able to collect information on the network itself. The hope is to use the Zeke client for that. The challenge with that is it seems like the development of the Zeke client on Windows is kind of stalled. Like, one of the things you run into today is there's, Zeke client on Windows is available. They'll tell you, oh yeah, hey, here it is, come grab it. And what you get is source code. And you need to go through and compile it for yourself. Anything that you need to compile for yourself, to me, sorry, that's still alpha code. You're not even at a beta code set. And it's been in that state for about 1.5 years now. So we're looking at what are the other possibilities to work with. One possibility, of course, is Sysmon, which is what we're using today. And we may end up sticking with that. But there are some things you don't get out of Sysmon, like the length of the connection. That's something we would get out of a Zeke end client. So yeah, we'll still kind of working through that one.
Yep. All right. What other questions you all have?
Yeah. So there were questions about it. Oh, just real quick. So there were questions about AC Hunter and where that's going. This is a mock-up of where we're kind of going with the interface.
Oh yeah. Okay.
So you can see that it's kind of similar to what you're seeing in RITA today, where we're going through and we're giving you some color-coded threat levels, but we're also including some icons to be able to identify what was the threat, what's actually adding into the score overall. We've got first seen prevalence, just like we talked about there, but we've also got hints. So this was something that Bill was involved with, where there are things you can safe list, right? Like, windowsupdate.com. Okay, that's a Windows system trying to patch itself. We can safe list that and never show it to you. And Bill has done a lot of work on vetting the safe list to try and reduce what you're going to see on day one using the next version of AC Hunter. But what he's also spent a lot of time on is hints. So the hints are there for things like TeamViewer, right? So a lot of us on the call probably know TeamViewer is a good or is evil. Well, that depends on whether you knew it was there, right? If the IT team installed it and they know it's on the system and they're using it for remote management, okay, TeamViewer is fine. But if you look at that and you say, what's TeamViewer? That's not something we use, and yet it's running on some of your systems. Ooh, TeamViewer bad. Well, it's something you really got to worry about. So what we did with the hints is we said, okay, for these edge case, for these marginal cases where it could be good or could be bad, some additional information to help the user identify, why do I care about this, could be super helpful. And Bill's gone through and kind of gotten all of those written up.
And really what we tried to do is like look at the workflow of network threat hunting, and like you kept saying, and I don't know how many iterations of this you guys went through whenever you were mocking it up, but it was always, what can we bring right to the front of people whenever they're doing a hunt, that it's in one pane? Also, I wanted to ask, I noticed that you have the ASN for DigitalOcean as red and Microsoft was green. What happened there? Did we finally get the ASN reputational kind of like in there, or what's that doing there?
Yes. So, so DigitalOcean consistently shows up as one of the top 10 sites where malicious traffic is originating. However, I'm not convinced that that means they have more malicious actors than other people. That may be a lot of security researchers like us use DigitalOcean. And I'll give you a good example. I have And Fawn's creating them now too. But we've gone through and we'll create a C2 channel. And we'll capture what that traffic looks like on the network, and we'll do blog entries. It's the whole malware of the day series that we do. Well, we'll go through and we'll document, hey, if you run into this malware, these are the telltale signs on the network that you want to go looking for. And people are taking those PCAPs and putting them into virus totals, saying this is a hostile system. And now, Virus Total will tag that IP address as a command and control server, when no, it was only used that way in our test environment. It's never actually hurt somebody. How much of DigitalOcean ending up in the top 10 is because of stuff like that? That I'm not certain of. But to go back to your original point, John, yes, we're looking at ASNs and we're looking at which ones are most common and using that to kind of color code and guide as well.
Well, and also if you look at that top 10, I think DigitalOcean is like 1 and 2. They're right at the top. But the rest of the top 20 are absolutely places you don't ever want a computer to communicate to.
There's a lot of .cns. Yes.
There's a lot in there. And the other thing, kind of riffing on that, is a lot of pen testing firms today were using CDNs. And that would be something that would not show up as a malicious ASN at all. It just looks like a standard content delivery network, where we're bouncing off of Microsoft, or we're bouncing off of Google, or any of those things. So this kind of gets back to what you teach in your class. There's modifiers, right? There's nothing that you can say, if you see this 100% of the time, it's bad. They're all modifiers. We're trying to bring as many of those modifiers right to your front display as we possibly can to help you make that determination if it's good or evil not.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with the current iteration of AC Hunter, that main screen kind of points you in the right direction, but you're never going to make a decision based on that, right? Like, it'll tell you, oh, hey, a new beacon showed up and here's the score. Well, okay, that's nice to know, but that's not enough information to say, is it good or is it evil? What we're trying to do here is give you more information so that you may be able to immediately decide, oh, that's okay, let me safe list it. Oh, wait, it's not. I want to dig in a little bit deeper, or I want to create a note around it, or I want to tag it for further review by somebody else, or whatever it is I want to do. If I do decide to drill in on it, this is the experience you're going to get. So AC Hunter, kind of like RITA, ended up being kind of modular. Go look at one place for beacons, go look someplace else for strobes, look someplace else for log connections. We're pulling all that stuff together within AC Hunter as well. So you'll have one consistent experience. So for example, like the graph here, here's my beacon graph that's taking place, but this is also showing me how much data was being transferred over that time as well. So you'll get everything in one spot. What this is showing me down here is that all 3,000 plus of my connections were doing the same get command using the same user agent string to the same URI. Well, why did we have to query the same URI 3,000 times in the course of a day? And oh, by the way, the user agent string that was being used was Microsoft Internet Explorer. That's the only host on the internet that we're using that with. Here's the other ones that are used, and they're more indicative of a Windows 10 system. Yeah, something's wrong with that first agent.
And that used to be like 3 screens that you would have to get this data.
Exactly.
And that changes things. Also, kind of use case. So everybody knows, like, I think Chris, Bill, and I, we've been talking about it a lot. And we kind of have a better understanding of where AC Hunter fits in the tech stack, right? If you're an organization and you're just worried about the general skidiots, AC Hunter may or may not be for you, right? We have the community edition that works for small organizations, and we're going to continue to support that.
Absolutely.
What we're out here for is we're literally the tool that we want to be the vanguard, the front end for that nation state level adversary that is doing CDN bouncing, that is bouncing off of Google. TrustedSec just released a tool, I think yesterday, where they do command and control through Outlook, which is very similar to GCAT, which is a tool that we released that does all of our command and control through Google. We want to make sure that people understand where we are. Like, if you're like, I just want an IDS system, this is not an IDS system. This is really there to find like that top shelf, scary ass adversary that wants to dwell and do long-term damage to your organization.
Yeah. Or the new stuff that no one has seen before, therefore there's no signature to detect it.
Exactly. So And ultimately, going back to the classes that Chris is teaching and the stuff that we go through all the time, there's a huge learning curve that I think the entire community has to go through, because we're so caught up in this idea of signature-based detection, and truly trying to get the word out to as many people as possible that you're not going to catch BHIS or Trusted Sec or Red Siege with just your standard signature-based detection or IP reputation or domain reputation. You're going to need to break through that. And this goes back to one of the things: we feel old and we're graybeards, even though mine is shaved off. But seriously, when I started taking computer security seriously and took the class from Chris, that generation of people in information security, was all about understanding the fundamentals of how crap worked. And I know we sound old and it's like, get off our lawn, but there's so many people coming into the industry now that are like, why do I have to know packet analysis? Why do I have to know what a header is? Why do I have to know any of this stuff? Because your adversaries are going to be smarter than you if you don't. And we've got to be smarter than our adversaries. Old. I'm just glad that, yeah, never mind. Yeah, I'm not that old. I just feel that way sometimes. But everything hurts and I'm dying. Good enough. Good enough.
Lovely. Chris, I thought you might want to answer this. Satch asked, do you have recommendations or resources for incorporating this in a classroom environment? I think something longer for over 3 to 4 sessions would be easier for students to pick up and retain for context.
If there was only a class like that.
Yeah, if only.
If only.
So we've got our level 1 threat hunting class. We're running that again the beginning of September. And I'm in the process of rewriting that to incorporate using RITA, as well as some of those scripts that we were there. I also want to dig into the Zeke logs a little bit deeper, give people some exposure to that. So yeah, that'll be going off in September. That's a 6-hour class. I'm also trying to reduce the slideware that's in there. Currently, it is 50% slides, 50% hands-on, and I really want to try and reduce the slide stuff down to like 2 hours. So it's more hands-on time. But as far as like that class goes, once that's out there, so for the folks that are, working at universities, high schools, whatever, if you want to adopt it and use it internally, go for it. We frequently get college classes that get together and attend the level 1 class together. So, and we actually have a process where you can get a hold of Shelby if you're the professor and get certificates issued for each of your students that were in the class at the time. So that's one option. But the other is, if you want to use the material, go for it. Please cite us back. That would be nice. But beyond that, if you want to take the level 1 class we do and adopt that to your own training curriculum, absolutely go for it. The other thing I should point out is that I gave you 2 data sets. If you want more to play with, because hey, more is always good, right? If you go to our website and then go to the blog, go to education, go to blogs, and then just do a search for malware of the day, you'll see all the stuff that Keith and Fawn have been working on that we've been going through and creating. We're open to suggestions. If there's something you're looking for that you don't see here, and let me open this up, and not just like if you're teaching a class, professor, whatever, if just in general you want to see something, please feel free to make suggestions. We're info@activecountermeasures.com. And if it's something we've done before, we'll give you a link to it. If it's something we haven't done yet and it looks interesting, like one of the, we were talking the other day, and one of the ones we hadn't done was one based on NTP. And, Fawn went nuts and went through and created that one. So that was awesome. So yeah, there's a lot of good ones here. The Lab 1, I actually pulled that right out of this Xenorat. So when you look at what's kind of cool about these is if you scroll all the way to the bottom, yeah, there's a lot of data in here. Awesome job on this, Fawn. If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you're always going to find a 24-hour PCAP file. So what I recommend to folks, if you're trying to hone your skills, go to the malware of the day. If you subscribe to the mailing list, you'll find out when these things hit. Go in, skip all the awesome stuff that Fawn has written up, jump to the bottom, grab this PCAP, now go through and do a hunt on it. Once you think you found everything out, Now go back up to the top and start back over through it. And you can see the full, write-up and description that's in there. And now you get to see, okay, did I miss anything?
Yeah. And one of the things I always tell my students in my classes, go do this without AC Hunter. Good luck.
Yep.
Or RITA. And that's kind of, it gets back to the education thing that I was just talking about. It's a weird sort of education thing. And I think that we've been so trained in this industry that, well, I just want a tool that kicks out a bright red flashy thing and tells me, is there any way that we could use some AI to do that for us? It just shows a gross misunderstanding of the problem as it resides.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe, sorry, Chris.
Oh, no,
if I can just kind of add to the data set as well. I'm working on a very kind of comprehensive exploration of beaconing properties. I kind of want to help you guys really understand the fundamental properties of beaconing, and then understand how we change these, how the different looks, how they would appear in AC Hunter. So our next article will actually have 12 different data sets. So we're gonna vary different beacons. We're gonna vary different jitters. We'll look at using multiple redirectors. We'll look at a randomized rotational strategy, a round robin rotational strategy. So I think really keep an eye out for that. So you're gonna have a whole lot of data to play with, and it's really gonna help you kind of form a bigger picture of understanding really beacon properties and how they appear in AC Hunter.
And with that, I need to get out of here, you all. I will talk to you all later. Great job, team. We want you guys out there using it. Give us feedback on the Discord server. What can we do better? That's why we're here. We're really trying to get you guys free tools that can change your information security posture in your lives. Help us help you, please. All right. With that, I'm out of here. Take care, everybody.
Later, John.
Thanks, John.
And sorry, Chris.
Oh, no, go for it, man. Go for it.
Yeah, just to reiterate one more time what Chris said. I'm super interested in interesting kind of edge cases and stuff, kind of just echo what John said again. We want to make this tool the vanguard, the frontier, capable of catching all advanced threat actors. We're a very dedicated but a fairly small team. We can't have all interesting data across our paths. So this is kind of where we rely sometimes on our collaboration with the community too. So you can send it to the general. Feel free to reach out to me personally too. If you find something interesting in terms of C2 or it being kind of undetectable or something like that, that's really the stuff I geek out on. And then as well, we can integrate it into our whole ecosystem and everyone gets to benefit from it at the end of the day. So yeah, please.
Awesome. Hey, so one last question I wanted to answer, which was, can Reader and AC Hunter detect things that only run during business hours? Yes. And I forget exactly what it's called because I'm not smart enough to do the back end math. Luckily, we have other people for that. But there's a part of the math is written up a way to look for dual planes, right? So if something's going off, let's say 10 times an hour, and you graph that over a 24-hour period of time, you're going to get a flat line across the top. Well, what if half the time it's going off 10 times an hour and half the time it's not going off at all, or it's only going off once per hour? Well, you're going to end up with two flat lines in that case. We've actually written up the back end to be able to go in and detect for cases like that. The other thing we've gone through and done is we've written it up. You may run into malware. It's rare, but it can happen. That may, let's say it only calls home every 4 hours. But if it calls home and a command set was waiting for it, well, now it will drop down to calling home once per minute, and it'll do that until, 5 tries and no.
Did we lose him?
I think we just lost him.
Yeah, we lost him.
Math to go through and detect that. So.
Oh, he's back. We lost you there, Chris.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I've got a thunderstorm coming through. So
I was going to say, I'm about.
You may have noticed it's gotten darker here. So
yeah.
Oh, we can't see your camera, so we don't know.
I got the camera off. Okay, well, let me turn that back on.
Yeah, I'm about 2 miles from Chris, and right when he disappeared, there's a huge flash. So.
Yeah. Yes. And then I come back and my hair's even curlier, and I'm a skeleton with all sorts of little light bulbs coming off. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool. So we doing our hangout now?
Yeah, let's do it. All right, so we're going to end the webcast. This is the end of the official webcast. Thanks for joining us, everybody. join us for the next webcast and join us for the next level 1 threat hunter training. I put a link for that in Discord.